You are listening to CPA Review and more. You are listening to CPA Review and more. You are listening to CPA Review and more. You are listening to CPA Review and more.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening wherever you're joining from. And thank you for listening to this episode of CPA Review and More with your host, Phil Yaeger. I'm your producer and director here at the Yaeger Studios, Rob Medford, and together we are bringing you the #1 podcast for CPAs and CPA candidates. If you're new to the show, I'd like to be the first to thank you for checking us out. We're excited to have you as part of our listenership. If you're here because you've already heard our show and you're a continued listener, we thank you for the ongoing support. It's always greatly appreciated. If you're in the market for a CPA review course or simply want to know more about what Yaeger CPA Review has to offer, check out our website at yaegercpareview.com or call our office and we'll answer any questions you might have. The link and telephone number will be in the description of this episode. Here at Team Yaeger, we're excited to tell you about our new Yaeger CPA Review subscription format. It's the same great Yaeger CPA Review course that you know and love on an all-new, month-to-month, no long-term commitment subscription format. But without any further delay, I'm going to pass the microphone on over to your host, Phil Yaeger.
Welcome, everyone who's joining us on the webinar here at Yaeger CPA Review. I can see you're joining now. And we'll go ahead and get us here live on Facebook, so bear with us if you're joining here on the webinar. And Phil, tell us how's your day going? Both of my Phils, how are you guys doing today?
Phil, go ahead. Phil is in New York City. Tell us how New York is today.
New York is doing great today. Great weather today. How about you?
Great weather. Second of 2 days, that's great weather, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Back to heat and humidity tomorrow. How was your day? Did you teach today? Did you teach at college today? What did you do today, Phil?
I did not teach today. However, I am in the process of just building my platform and my classes for the fall semester.
And when you're not teaching, he actually every morning he gets up, takes off a trial balance, makes a few adjusting entries, right?
Oh, of course.
And then he brings them over to the columns, say balance sheet, income statement. And if they don't balance, what do you do, Phil?
Oh, then I got to go back to the trial balance and the journal entries.
Nah, I plug it. I believe in plugging it.
Plug it. Always plug it. Always plug it.
Always.
What was my day? All right, this is my day. My day was we did what did we do today? I didn't do any Facebook Live video.
No, because we're doing this.
We get questions. We get certain questions which are released to us from the CPA. All right. And there's about 44 in financial. I've been working on those. Yep. And, these are, what questions are these that they release to us, Megan?
Yeah, so the questions that they release, typically they're either tired questions, like people have been talking about them so that they release them, or they're just questions that maybe weren't the best representation of the topic on the exam. So they release them to us so that you as candidates can practice them. And we include those into our test bank. The thing about them is they send them to us, and they just say letter A is correct. And then it's our job as a review course to go in, which is what Phil's been referring to. He goes in and he discusses why the answer is correct in addition to why the other answers are incorrect, kind of unique to the CPA exam, maybe different than your college classes. All the incorrect answers on the exam are the mistakes you could possibly make when you calculate the correct answer. So they're a little tricky, but that's what he's been working on.
Yeah, and actually one of the multiple choice was from exam before 1995.
Yeah.
I went back and I found that question. Different names, but
okay.
And
so your
answer was incorrect. What?
It's been on there a while.
Yeah.
Very good.
So
well,
anyway.
So let's kick off our Q&A session. I want to welcome everybody who's joining us live here tonight. So go ahead and give us a shout, say where you're from. We'd love to hear a little bit about who's joining us. And then we'll start diving into some of the questions that we have gotten from you as you've registered for this live Q&A that we're planning to do monthly. So we're glad that you're joining us for this one. And you can just...
And anyway, I'd like to introduce our instructors today. I don't know what you would call them today. Yeah. But anyway, I'm Phil Yaeger, CPA. Been doing CPA review for 41 years. I started when I was 2 years old. And then there's Megan Lefchek, okay, is Chief, what's your title? Chief Operating Officer?
Chief Operating Officer.
Right.
But I also help with a ton of the content too.
And all, yeah, content, and she's a CPA. Yep. And you work for which Big Four, Megan?
I'm a KPMG alumni, so I worked in the Denver office.
And as a Master's of Accounting. And then we have our newest person who's joined our team, all right, Phil. I always miss. I'm going to call you Phil. I can't stand the name Phil.
There we go.
Phil Sookram.
Phil
right?
Sookram, you got it.
A CPA, and also you have a master's in accounting?
Yep, master's in accounting. That's correct.
And you teach where, Phil? Where do you teach full time?
I am a professor at St. Peter's University in Jersey City, New Jersey.
So, you know, we all are familiar with the exam. So let's start with the list of questions we received. Okay? All right. And you want me to read some, Megan?
Well, pick the first one. You can get us.
Here we go. First question. All right. Please, I'm not making fun of anybody. Okay. Can all 4 exams be taken in 1 month? Next question. How many days gap should you have between each exam? All right. First of all, can you take all 4 exams in a month? Yes, you can, but you probably won't pass. All right. You need to spend time. This is not a race, okay? You don't get a CPA designation with a certificate that says you won the race, okay? It just says you're a certified public accountant, licensed in whatever state you take the exam. But you probably need financial 3 months, I would say. There's so much information, all right? Auditing, what do we say, 3 months?
Yeah, auditing's a little bit less. If you're in audit and you've seen clients and you've done audit work, you might not need as much time, but just remember audit is a very academic exam. So even if you've done an internship or you've worked a year in audit, you're still going to need to study. You're not going to be able to just walk in there and take the exam. I think a lot of folks that have taken an internship get a little bit an unrealistic expectation on how well they're going to do just walking into the audit portion. You do still need to study for it.
And then I would take third, the regulation part, which really takes about 3 months. A lot of information.
Oh,
and
easily,
Oh, God, it's a lot. And then we have the last part. We recommend the BEC because the BEC has the written communications.
Yep.
And the written communications can come from FAR, auditing, reg. So it's best to do those parts first before you do the BEC with the written communications.
Yep. Yeah, and it's kind of BEC is kind of a catch-all. I mean, it's the most broad part of the exam, and it includes a lot of topics that you'd have taken as an undergrad before you got to your accounting major. So econ, some of the capital budgeting stuff might have been in a finance class, intro to finance, time value of money, all of those concepts show up on the BEC portion of the exam. And so don't shortchange yourself on the time you need to study for it, because it might be, you might have seen that stuff before, but it's been a while, so it'll take a little longer to refresh.
And the rumor that the BEC is the easiest part of the exam, take it first? No way. It was easy when they first introduced it because they had to curb it tremendously because the people were having trouble with subjects thrown at them that they never had before, like economics.
Yeah.
What else? What was it? Computers?
Information science type of question. So IT, and we'll get into this in a little bit, but we'll chat through some of the changes that you're going to be seeing on all the portions of the exam going forward. And that's one area that's always in a lot of flux because it's changing rapidly. So they have to kind of keep up with
Now,
that.
Phil, when you took the exam, did you take one after another or did you break each one?
I took breaks in between. Yeah.
All right. How many days did you take between each exam, would you say?
The amount of time I needed to study. I mean, for FAR, I needed 3 months to study for FAR.
So you took the next part. Did you take a rest between FAR and the next part?
No, I mean, I took probably maybe a couple of days. I took just to get a feel for when the score was going to be released. I might take like 1 or 2 days just to recharge and just, because I understand that if I'm going to a new section, that's going to be another 2-3 months of studying. So I probably took just about maybe a day or two off just to get
you got to just take it, get off the shock of the exam and don't think about the part you took. Just move on. All right.
Yeah.
Because once you pass the part,
oh yeah,
18 months to keep that, that part. And this is another thing. When you get your notice to schedule, you can either take it you can buy 2 parts or 4 parts, right?
Yep.
Or 1 part? How many? What's the deal with that?
I think you can get any number of parts, but I think
a number of parts.
Yeah, a mistake that candidates typically will make is say they're getting ready to graduate and they get their exam. They want to schedule their exams all summer long before they start as a new hire at a Big Four firm. That's typically one of the areas where people will have a big chunk of time not working, and they'll schedule them all before they've ever studied, before they've ever sat for an exam. They buy them all, and so their notice to schedule only lasts 6 months. One of the biggest mistakes you could do. Wait until you take an exam before you get your notice to schedule for the rest of the exam.
See, I would get a notice to schedule for 2 exams.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Is that what you said?
Well, no, I mean, just 2, no more than 2. Always give yourself enough time so that you don't have the unrealistic time pressure. If you were to get that notice to schedule with all 4 on day 1 before you started studying, you now have 6 months to take all 4 parts, ultimately. Like, I don't think people realize that when they pay that money, that's what they're in essence doing. Even though technically you still have 18 months from the date you pass, you're going to have to repay for the actual exam fee.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I just wanted to clarify, just to let everyone know, when if you were to pay for 2 parts, when you get the notice to schedule, they give you the time frame, and it would be the same 6 month time frame. So for example, let's say you pay for FAR and audit and you get the notice to schedule as of July 1st. Both exams you have to take them you'll have from July 1st to December 31st. That 6 month window to complete both of those exams.
Yep.
And that's good because you have to have a deadline. Didn't we discuss that, Phil? You got to have deadlines. So you pay 2 parts, 6 months, it's good for. All right. You're going to take FAR first, auditing second. All right. Say 3 months for each part. So 3 months is all you can spend studying for FAR. All right. Take a day off. Then you have 3 months for the auditing. You're setting deadlines. You have to have deadlines because they don't set them for you necessarily.
Yeah.
All right. Next question. All right. How to pass. Oh, by the way, the other thing is, if you want to pass this exam, make sure you study the AICPA blueprints.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Most of the providers do not integrate those blueprints within their books. We do. All right. So remember, if they don't talk about the blueprints, then think twice about that course. So therefore, make sure you look at the AICPA blueprints because they are the tasks they're going to test you on. All right. Nothing more, nothing less.
And I want to chime in too. If you are using another course provider, still download the blueprints. I consider that as your study guide from your professor. Like the AICPA, the people who developed the exam wrote a study guide. They say exactly what you need to know, and they're giving it to you for free. And then your textbook, whatever your textbook you're using, is on top of that study guide. You should look at that primary study aid, the AICPA blueprint first, and then use a supplemental resource such as Yaeger CPA Review or a textbook or whatever it is. That should be secondary to the blueprints themselves.
But more so, as I push this, all right, all the blueprint tells you is the task.
Yeah.
It doesn't give you the information of what the task is. That's where we come in, all right? Yep. We give you the blueprints and the tasks in detail, all right, what you have to know for that blueprint. That's important.
Yeah, so for example, if the blueprint says, hey, what is the journal entry for this? Then in our book, we would indicate the journal entry for that representative task. So that's kind of how it's laid out in our book. It will say that the representative task, and then it'll show you the information.
Yeah, because if it's not integrated, Megan, in your book, all right, it'll give you the task. Then you have to go take that review course's book and start, digging in. Where is that stuff?
Yeah.
All right?
It's true. That would be the only other way to do it, is if your course that you're using or the textbook from college that you're using doesn't have it split up like that, you'd actually have to use the index of the book to find that information.
Next question says, how do I best prepare for the first exam? Well, we recommend for the first exam to take financial accounting. All right, how do you prepare? First of all, you get a course that has the blueprints in it that integrates the information under each blueprint. And then you set up a schedule depending upon whether you're working or not. And we generally say if you're working full-time, try to do 2 hours Monday through Thursday night, and then take off Friday. You need a day off from this. And then Saturday and Sunday, unless it's religious reasons or something, all right, you gotta study. And what do we say Saturday and Sunday? 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon?
Just to get.
Yeah, so sorry for
three
that.
and three, 3 and 3 too much?
No, I would almost say if you have time on the weekend, to skew it towards the weekend a little bit, where you have time to break it up in the morning and then at night. Like if you can do 2 or 3 hours in the morning and then an hour or two at night, have like a 4-hour study session on the week each day during the weekend, that's great. Because then you have lunch and you can kind of like relax for a little bit and then study for a little longer after that.
Now, it says here, next question, what are the changes starting June 10th? Well, first of all, any changes, all right, are not starting until July 1st, if there's going to be any change. All right. Now, Megan, can you talk briefly about what is becoming new July 1st under each part?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think a lot of people have it's scary when there's changes. They're always really worried about the exam changes. The majority of the items tested on the exam are not changing at this point. So the big ones for the year were leases that were tested in FAR at the beginning of the year, and then Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which was tested starting in the first of the year for regulation. So luckily, FAR and Reg are fairly stable for the beginning of the testing window in July. So I don't want people to stress significantly about FAR and regulation. The other two, they tend to alternate. The AICPA luckily tries to alternate when they do changes. So FAR and Reg are usually on the first of the year, and then July 1st, they tend to do audit and BEC, and that's consistent with this year. And BEC has the most significant blueprint changes, and then audit, I would say, has the most significant content changes. So what I mean by that, so the blueprint, again, is your study guide from the people who wrote the exam. So sometimes they'll go back in and rewrite how they want you to study. So they'll rephrase one of the blueprints, make it more clear. For instance, in IT, they've reorganized it so that it's much more clear and consistent with how you would need to know that information as a CPA. So that's what they've done for the blueprints. They're either clarifying, they're giving it a makeover, basically, is what I call it on the blueprints. But then in addition to that, those are the types of changes. Type of change 1 is blueprint change. Type of change 2 is a content change, which stems from a new accounting standard update or a new PCAOB ruling where they're changing the way that the reports are actually issued. So those types of changes are typically eligible for testing 6 months after they're released by whatever legislative body or regulatory body that issues them. So those changes are hitting audit this year. And so in audit, you probably have heard this in the past, but issuer reports from the PCAOB. So if you're issuing a report for an issuer, the opinion paragraph now goes up to the top. It used to get buried kind of down below, just like a non-issuer, and the non-issuer reports have not changed, but now the issuer would have that opinion up top. Well, in addition to that, that was eligible for testing last July, and there were 2 parts to that legislation. So now they're testing the critical audit matter. So the critical audit matter is a paragraph in the report, or potentially more than one, about areas that the company that you're auditing has problems. And you're telling the people who use the report, such as investors, about that problem. And so there's a lot of information about what exactly needs to go in those reports for critical audit matters, and that's the type of thing that you'll need to know for the exam. But that's going to be something that's new, that wasn't tested in the past, that I will highly recommend you look at, make sure you understand what a critical audit matter paragraph says, what it looks like. I would guess, I mean, again, I don't know, but if you have a document review simulation where you have areas where you have to pick and choose what phrasing needs to go there, I highly recommend that you look at what phrasing might need to go there for a critical audit matter paragraph. So that is for audit. And then BEC, like I said, they did a lot of blueprint changes. So they reorganized the IT section. And I don't want people to freak out. It's not actually different. The changes in the IT section are just reorganized, and the information that they've been testing has not actually changed. The only area that they're re-emphasizing, because it's becoming more important in practice in both audit and IT, has to do with data analytics. And so I would expect for both audit and IT, there's not actually a new type of question, but they're going to show you in either a multiple choice question or a simulation, some sort of visualization. And I think visualization scares people. It's just a pie chart or a graph or a bar chart or some sort of visual way to display the information. And then they, as the examiner, would ask you about the picture and say, what is X, Y, and Z and Y? And that information you should be able to see fairly easily from whatever visualization they give you. And you're not actually taking Excel data and creating one, they're giving you the visualization and you're just answering questions. So that has been tested, but they've made new blueprints on audit to clearly define how they're testing that. They've re-emphasized it on BEC as well. And I asked the AICPA, hey, what's the difference between how you're testing it on BEC and how you're testing it on audit? So in BEC, they would probably have something more internal. So you'd have some sort of dashboard from a manager's perspective on information they would need for decision making. Whereas from an auditor's perspective, you'd get a provided by client document about maybe their account balances, and they'd show it in a visual format, and you'd maybe have to say if they were over and understated or something more from an auditor's perspective. So, but the same type of chart or graph would be used in both scenarios. It's the user that would dictate how they differentiate it from BEC versus audit. So those are probably the biggest changes that I've put into some of our new content. We're planning to put together a little blog post and series on all of these changes, so you can get it in writing in addition to this audio. But I think no one should be super worried about going into these exams because everything's changed. I think the only significant changes, if you haven't taken your exam in a long time, like say you've taken a couple years off, you need to know revenue recognition. That has changed, but it's been on the test for a while. And you need to know Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Though all of those changes are very, very eligible for testing, and they may trip you up if you haven't taken reg since the beginning of the year. So those are probably the two most significant. And then leases, I think, is also a significant piece. And there's a couple little nuances that are eligible for testing. They keep tweaking it, but the significant stuff had been tested since the beginning of the year. So, Phil, did you want to chat anything more about?
No, I just wanted to say that I know our books will be current updated for that. All right, for anybody taking it. But what happens if people don't have a course with the blueprints, which means all the other courses? Is there any place they can find what you just said?
Yeah,
as
so
far as what they're changing?
What we're going to do is develop a free resource for our candidates that are not our students that they can go to get some of this information. I think that it's important for us as review course providers, since we do attend the meetings with the AICPA, to provide that information to the students, because otherwise I don't know where else they would find that. They'd have to watch all the accounting standard updates and then count 6 months and then figure out what's important. I think that it's our job to kind of help candidates on that side of things.
And if you watch that, I would suggest you have a lot of caffeinated coffee next to you. Right?
It's true.
Or Mountain Dew, or Dr. Pepper. A lot of caffeine.
Something to keep you awake. I mean, maybe you just need to sit in a cold room, maybe a library that has really strong.
By the way, don't be, we're not telling you this to intimidate you, because, with these changes, all right? First of all, the exam is curved, okay? I mean, they're going to pay, I don't know, what percentage?
Well, okay, so let's talk about that, because I think it's so complicated how they score this exam. Like, I think almost curve is too simplistic of a phrase for that. But in general, Philip, if you were to guess, how many as a percentage out of the total 100% do you think a candidate would have to get right to pass this exam? It's not 75%.
Yeah, it's not 75%. 75 is the score that you receive, but it's not a percentage based on, what you've marked right or incorrect or anything like that. I'm not even sure. I mean, I would think what do you guys think?
Well, okay, go ahead, Megan. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, when I chat with people, 9 times out of 10, people will come out of the exam and think they just completely bombed. They will think they absolutely failed it. No way they could have passed. And to me, I think the reason they feel that way is they probably only accurately scored a failing grade from a school perspective. Like, they probably, if they had scored that few correct in an academic setting at a university, they probably would have failed. And that's why I think when they come out of the exam, they think that they had to have. There was no way. And that's just not true, because the way that they're assigning points to all of these questions isn't consistent. So some questions will get more weight, some will get less weight, some won't be scored at all because they're pre-test questions and they're just getting a sense on if X candidate would accurately answer the question given their abilities on all the other questions. So those aren't scored at all. And sorry, that was my
battery 30%.
Speaker here. Sorry about that. I think that, Phil, I guess when you chat with students, what on average do most people come out of the exam feeling like they did well, or do they feel?
You're talking to me, Megan? Any answer? Yes? Okay. The answer is yes. They always feel like they failed. Now, let me give you a basic idea of how they grade this thing. All right. First of all, it's all machine graded, the exam. It's totally machine graded. And, all right, what they do is they have all the exams taken during a testing window going through the computer for grading. And they have determined what the cut score will be. And think of a cut score, if whether you play golf or not. When you play golf, all right, if you don't get a certain score, above or below par value, whatever, all right, then the golfer can't go on to the 4th round. Well, this is the same thing with the CPA exam, all right? They have determined a cut score. So maybe it's different every time. There's no one specific cut score. So let's assume it's 63%, okay? Now, then they'll pull out the papers that hit the cut score, and then theoretically, all right, they will look at they're going to determine how many people they want to pass. It's based on a certain percentage, and usually it's about the same each time, all right? If it goes up, it might go up 1 or 2%, and they release the percentages. But please remember this. Theoretically, this is what I've been told, theoretically, there are people who look at the final papers that are passed, all right? Because if they have a certain people that they passed, and some of the people think they should have passed, while the other judges, the people, the AICPA, all right, they don't feel you should pass, all right, then they'll look at that paper and determine whether, based on a majority of the people who are reviewing the exams, whether you should pass or not. So to make it, let's just say it this way, all right? Don't sit there and figure out, whether you passed or not. Just go in and do as much of the exam as you can, all right? Make sure you have some time management set up, because if you have time management, you'll do some of each simulation. And that's the secret. You got to do some of each simulation, not the whole one, all right? But if you leave out simulations because you run out of time, once you start leaving out 1 or 2, they're not going to pass you. That's it. And also, there's certain areas that they will automatically fail you on. Example, there's ethics in regulation. Mm-hmm. There's also ethics in auditing. All right. If you fail or you do weaker on those areas, they're not going to pass anybody who has poor ethics. I'll tell you right now. Okay. That's true. The other area is entities in regulation. If you're weaker in entities, which is corporation, partnership, taxation, then they probably will not pass you. Okay? All right? Now, once again, we don't know how this is done. There's algorithms, all right? They can determine whether you're guessing or not. There's all types of things they can determine, all right? They're like Big Brother, you know? Ooh, and they know, all right? They know what they have in their system. It's top secret. It really is, all right? We never find out when we go to the course providers meeting, all right? Although we try to find out, all right? And by the way, most of the people at the Prometrics who make up the exam, not the Prometrics Center, but the AICPA who makes up the exam, all right, a lot of them are mathematicians, computer scientists, all right, and some CPAs.
Yep.
So that tells you, all right, there's all types of things built in there to tell the AICPA information about you.
Yep.
Hey everyone, really hope you're enjoying this episode of CPA Review and More. And let's face it, if you're anything like us, you probably listen to your fair share of podcasts. And that's exactly why here at Yaeger CPA Review, we've teamed up with Podcoin to bring you a great way of getting paid just for listening to the podcasts you already enjoy. So, I know it sounds a little crazy, and I assure you, it's not. Here's how it works. You listen to podcasts such as CPA Review and More, and then you earn Podcoin while you listen. You can turn that Podcoin into gift cards at places like Amazon, Starbucks, or Dunkin' Donuts. Or if you're anything like us here at Team Yaeger, you can donate to a charity right through the Podcoin app. The more you listen, the more you earn. So, what are you waiting for? Go to your app store and your iPhone or Android and download the Podcoin app now. Use promo code REVIEW when you sign up for the first time, and we'll even give you 300 Podcoin as a thank you just for signing up. In return, Podcoin will give us a little bit of information about the listeners of our podcast who use the Podcoin app, how long they're listening, and which episodes are the most popular. That's it. Check out Podcoin today.
Next question says, why can't the SIMs be more related to the actual exam with all the information available for people taking the exam? All right. Well, the SIMs are related to the exam. And if you, first of all, let me tell you something. All right. The AICPA does not release a lot of the simulations to us as course providers. All right. There are a few on the AICPA website, aicpa.org, that you can practice with. All right. Those are from the AICPA. All right. But, you know, in this business, everyone says, hey, I have 200 task-based simulations, my course. All right. We have 500 of them. All right. But they are all, if not maybe a couple of them, but they're all prepared by that course provider. Now, they don't have any idea what's going to be asked. Okay. So therefore, all right, I ask people, hey, you took that course. How many test-based simulations did they give you to practice? 200? All right. And they'll say, yes. 100? Yes. All right. Did you see any of those on the exam? No, I don't know why. Why weren't those on the exam? And the answer is because they're prepared by that company who you're taking the review course. So don't even waste your time on that. And secondly, all right, the AICPA says you should not do tons of multiple choice. The multiple choice questions that we get, just like all other providers, are actually from the old content specification, and they're not higher level critical thinking. They're lower level, all right? The multiple choice today are harder, all right? You have to actually think. That's what they want. They want people who can think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that let's talk a little bit about drilling multiple choice questions in general. Like, do you think that's a good strategy?
Well, how did you study for multiple choice, Phil?
For multiple choice, I mean, the main method that I used to study was, I made sure that I understood the concept of the question, because I just truly believe if you spent time understanding the accounting concept behind the question, they could throw you any number, any situation, and you'll understand how to methodically work through it. So I wasn't someone that just wanted to do 1,000 multiple choice questions, because to me, if I didn't understand the concept, they could change one number and I won't know the answer. So using Yaeger CPA, I just spent more time on the videos, on the actual.
Oh, Phil did take our course. Now it's interesting. When he came on with us, I did not know he was a student of ours. All right, honestly, because with streaming video online, I don't get to know the students unless they call me a lot of times. But Phil took the course, so he can really, we're not going to do a promotional here for our course. All right, but anyway, yes, you have to know the concepts, right?
Yeah. Well,
and what do we stress all the time in this course, Phil?
Mm-hmm. You get stress that AI CPA blueprints.
Yes. No, that's it.
That's
so
it.
You know what?
Yeah.
All you have to know is you have to know what the Prometric screen looks like at the Prometric Center. Yep. All right. Now, a lot of the task-based simulations, not task-based, the blueprints say interpret something. Like, for example, they have one in leases. All right. This is a blueprint. It says interpret the lease, that you're given. They'll give you a copy of a lease, right? And tell them what the advantages are of the lease as a finance lease or an operating lease. So, all right, they're going to give you documents. They'll give you the lease, all right? You will determine whether it's a finance lease to the lessee, it's a sales type lease to the lessor, or is it an operating lease to the lessee, lessor, all right? And then, all right, you're going to recommend which one is the best one. That's really what it is. You have to know the requirements to be a finance lease, all right? And you have to know what a sales type lease is. So really, they're trying to say, we want you to look at this as though you're in the real world. Example would be in regulation. I always give this, all right? Now, they're saying, hey, you're a tax preparer, all right? What happens? The client comes in, and the client brings you a box of papers. That's what they actually used to do. A box of papers, all these things, and say, hey, you figure out, Mr. Accountant, what you have to know. So that's what they're going to do with the exam. They're going to give you maybe different documents, lists of things, all right? And you have to determine, they'll ask you, what is the adjusted gross income? So you have to know what items make up adjusted gross income, all right? Now, if you know what they are, then you can look at the documents and pull out the things you need. You have to know what you're looking for. That's the way you do a tax return in the real world. All right, a lot of times you give your client an organizer to fill out the information, but they don't fill it out. A lot of them just don't fill it out. They come in.
And now there's some neat tools where you'll scan all the receipts and you'll send them to but it's still, at the end of the day, is just a pile of receipts that you have to dig through as a tax preparer.
Yeah, they give you everything in the world, and they say, oh, is this deductible? Is that deductible? Yeah. Well, that's really what they're trying to do on the exam.
That's what they're simulating. Yeah, that's exactly what they're simulating.
And why is this? Why did they decide they want to give more real-world critical thinking, Megan?
I genuinely think that people who have started working in Big Four, especially since this is geared towards auditors, I mean, it is a certified professional accounting exam, but you want to have people that can perform an audit and sign off on an audit report. And I think that they were getting into the firms and not able to perform their duties at a high enough level as work is getting sent overseas and they have automation doing some of the lower level work. You have to perform at a very high level right out of the gate, and you don't have that extra 6 to 10 months to figure out what you're supposed to do. You have to just start reviewing and performing at a high level, and that's, I think, why the exam has gotten as hard.
Yeah, people were coming in, weren't they? And they passed the CPA exam, and then they started working for the Big Four. They didn't know anything.
Well, it's not that they didn't know anything. They knew academic knowledge. They didn't know
right, but they
do something.
CPA did not indicate that because they were CPA, they really knew more.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and that's why they're trying to force candidates to think on their feet in a time compressed environment. That's what they're simulating. Because think about it, guys. If you're in crunch time and you have an audit report due, you're at a firm and it's due, and you're going to stay for the next 14 hours to get it done with your team, there's some stress. There's some time compressed stress. So that's what they're simulating when you take this exam. It's not just for fun to see how hard you sweat while you're taking a 4-hour exam. There's a reason they're trying to get folks ready.
Now, we're not here to intimidate you, okay? Just remember, all right, the exam is passable, and, there's the there's the cut score, and they adjust the cut score so a certain percentage will pass. So please, it is a passable exam.
Okay.
And you know what? Don't give up.
All right. So we have a couple questions from the folks here currently live session. So let's see. So the first one I will ask is, of all the courses or of all the sections that are included in the CPA exam, so for example, FAR Audit Reg BEC, which one do you actually think is the most challenging and why?
Well, first of all, why do you want to take the exam to be challenged? Okay? You want to take the exam that's passable. You want to be challenged, pass the exam, and then go out and find a job that they challenge you, right? I mean, that's my feeling. But, you know, which part is most challenging? The most challenging part is the part that I don't teach. Okay? You know, I mean, now, when I used to teach it, it wasn't challenging. I would, you know, but you know what? It's interesting, all right? And I think anybody who teaches will, hey, we teach the stuff. We say it over and over and over. So you know what? Like regulation. I teach regulation, taxes, all that. It's easy to me. In fact, I remember, I can tell you what's on the next page, all right? Just because I've seen it. But also, I found when they release these simulations to us, I can just take it and I can figure out what I need from the documents. Now, I don't think I can really teach that, how I do that. I don't know how I do it, all right? It's just experience. But you're not competing against Phil Yaeger. You're not competing against Megan. You're not competing against Philip How do you pronounce your last name, Phil?
Yep, Sookram, you got it.
Sookram,
You'll
right.
get it at some point.
Sounds like a sugar substitute. You know that? Anyway, so I'm just kidding, Phil. So, you know, you're not competing against us. You're competing against other people, all right, who are in the same position. And, you know, you don't have to get everything right. You can't think the way we think. Hey, you want to go teach CPA review for 41 years? I guarantee you will be an expert. All right. But for example, I don't teach a lot of subjects anymore. Well, I don't teach economics. I don't know. You know, it's interesting. A student had trouble with economics, and it was July 4th of last year. I remember the weekend, and he was taking it. Remember that?
Yeah.
And all right, there was no one around because Megan, she knew it probably better than I do, and she was away someplace. So I couldn't say to this guy, hey, you know, forget it. So, you know, I went and looked up the areas he was having trouble with. Puts, calls, I remember that. Hedging. I thought hedging had to do with landscaping. Hedging. So I read all, you know, I went on Google and I did a Google search and I found, you know, articles on all these areas and I wrote it down. All right. It took me about 3-4 hours. And then I called him up and I taught him what I just learned. Yeah. All right. Now, I honestly have to tell you, I don't remember necessarily what a put and call is, and I don't remember what the best hedge was for certain situations. But at the time, I could tell him, and I am happy to say he went in and passed the last part BEC. All right? And the greatest thing is when they tell you, hey, you know, I passed. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right? That's all it takes. But all I'm saying is I don't teach economics.
I guess the part of the exam for this, from the student's perspective, the part of the exam that's going to be hard for you, and I think summarizing what Phil said, you're going to have a part you're excellent at. Everybody has something they're naturally talented at. And there's going to be a part that you're not excellent at. And all you have to do is get a 75. And then in practice, just as Phil demonstrated, in practice, you're going to have resources that you can go to if you end up on a client and you don't know that information as well as you probably should. You can look it up. You can talk to your peers. You can get the resources you need to present it to the client in a very polished way as a CPA needs to. As you know, that's what we do in practice. But for this exam, it's not that. You have to know it at the 75 score, not 75%, a 75 score and pass this exam. So don't put the pressure on yourself that you need to know 100% of all of this perfectly. You will never know 100% of this perfectly. I don't think anybody is capable of knowing this perfectly. So your goal is to go in there, think on your feet, do it to the very best of your ability, and then see how you do. Worst case scenario, and I think people go into this thinking that failure is like they're going to live on the street somewhere forever. Like I don't know what they think failing will cause. But it's really, if you fail, no one's going to know unless you tell them. I say this as much as I can, it's a very expensive practice test. If you go in there and you fail, do not beat yourself up. It's an expensive practice test. You learned by doing it. You learned some of the questions that they might ask on the next exam. You may get questions you've taken before if you take it again. And I mean, it was just expensive, a couple $100. It's not the worst case scenario that you're imagining when you're laying in bed at night losing sleep over it. So don't try to reinvent the wheel. It's just 4 hours of your life. You go in, you do the best you can, you come out of there, you let the examiners grade it, don't grade yourself, and then see how you did. And then if you didn't pass, you go in and take it again.
Bill, any comments you have, Phil?
Yeah, no, just I agree with your guys' point. What's easy to you might be difficult for someone else, and vice versa. I may understand statement of cash flows better than the next person, and that same person might understand accounts receivable or fixed assets better than myself. So it's kind of a subjective question. What I would say is the most important thing is identifying what you believe you're good at, and riding that weight of confidence, understanding that if you're smart enough to learn that one concept, which could be accounts receivable, fixed assets, apply the same knowledge to another concept that you may not be comfortable with, and have faith that you do know some things. So, if you apply that confidence to each section that you're not fully understanding, I guarantee you with just taking time to sit down and, go through it, and maybe even doing practice questions and getting them wrong, that'll help you identify, why you got it wrong, and you'll never get something wrong twice if you really understand why you got it wrong.
That's so true. That's absolutely.
And also, there's one thing that everyone forgot. When you're out there in the real world doing it, you don't have a clock in front of you ticking off time, all right? Or as we call it, the time bomb, all right? Hey, when you have that clock that's ticking off in front of you, God, that's even more pressure, all right? Hey, that's there. Why is it there? Yeah, to give you, obviously, to show you the time you have left, but it's also sort of aggravating, It would be nice if you could just shut it off, right? You can't shut it off. It just ticks. All right. But anyway, that's the other thing. Let me just mention here. It says here, is it possible to go in depth with the fake cash method? Now, if you take our course, there's a method that I came up with. It's not in any textbook. All right. It's called the fake cash method. And what the fake cash method is, it's actually a method, and I don't even remember when I came up with it or where it happened. I honestly, because I remember my wife in the car said, "Where'd you come up with that fake cash method?" I said, "I don't remember." But, I've been using it a long time. And what it does is, it's a method where you know whether a change in current asset and current liability is an addition to net income when you adjust it from accrual to cash, or a decrease in net income. All right. And it always works. It works with current assets, current liabilities. All right. And if you call me at the office, I will be happy to explain to you the fake cash method. I don't want to really take the time on this webinar to go over it. It just takes too much time.
I wanted to cover, because I know that the audio is kind of in and out for Steve, but you had mentioned to me on the Facebook Live, just so that we could cover it, if you're taking FAR in the next 6 months, there's actually a free resource that we recommend all CPA candidates. It's not just Yaeger students. Anyone can access this, and you just have to have a current notice to schedule. You go to NASBA.org/professional literature. You can just Google NASBA professional literature, and you'll get a free searchable version of the accounting standard codification, so the ASC, so that you can actually go in and practice research questions. And what you'll end up getting from that is all of this free technical content. It's a little bit hard to understand because the codification is hard to dig through, but it's good to read how they're phrasing some of that. It's good to understand that they'll show you initial recognition and then remeasurement and where things might be. So then when you get on the exam, you'll be able to find things more quickly. So I do recommend all students go check it out. It's free. It lasts for 6 months. So I would definitely try to get it right before you take FAR while you're studying for FAR, so that you have it during financial accounting and reporting. That's the most important section. But it also includes the audit standards. So those are also available free of charge. The one that they charge for a searchable function is the ASC. So that's why they are giving it to candidates for free for this purpose. It's pricey if you're trying to get it as a practitioner. So.
And Megan, remember, these codification standards you can sign up for them and get 6 months access. They are not sold in any store, all right? They're only available on this webinar, all right?
Yeah.
All right?
No,
Please remember, send in $29.95 in the next few minutes.
Okay.
And if you send in the next 5 minutes, we'll send you 2 copies of the FASBs.
Yeah, I think people will be banging down the door for the FASBs, won't they? Yeah. Since those are out of date. So anyways.
Do we have another Q&A? Do we have another question from people tonight?
Yeah, so the one that Shane asked is how often do they change the syllabus? So the AICPA blueprint, how often does that happen?
Well, they don't. Go ahead. I'll let you answer that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, you can answer too, Phil.
They don't change all of the blueprints. What they do is every 6 months, they might clarify a blueprint, 1, 2, all right? And then they might add a new topic to the blueprint, all right? But this is not like where they clear the syllabus, all right? Clear the blueprints at the end of a testing window and come up with a brand new one, all right? It doesn't really change. It really doesn't. But they're going to come up with things that you may not have heard of. And I'll tell you how a lot of cases, there's a lot of topics I've seen in regulation where they'll come up. And of course, they're not in your textbooks you took in college. You know what I do? I go to Google and I do a search on Google. And, I always find that new blueprint topic. And, I think that's the best resource. I mean, we didn't have it when I was growing up. We had to basically go into writings.
I will caution you, a lot of those resources that are on Google may not be 100% up to date. So if you're looking, for instance, if you Google leases, you will end up with both current and historical lease rules. So if they're starting to show you things that have to do with a bright line, then that's the old stuff. If it has significantly all or majority of, that's the new stuff. So if you need resources like that, typically there's a couple topics. Revenue recognition and leases are the 2 big ones for FAR that you may end up with some old, outdated information if you Google it. But that's why you come to a review provider like us. We offer very affordable subscriptions for those types of questions if you wanted to.
Yes, we have. You want to mention, should we mention our subscription plan?
Yeah, we can mention them. So in addition to offering the instructor hotline, you just saw, you're speaking with Philip here, and then Steve is also available on the instructor hotline to answer all of your questions. But we launched a subscription model. So for a very reasonable rate, for $89 a month, you can get access to our course, and you'll have one section at a time, and then when you're done with studying for that section, you can switch to the next section. And that will include everything, all the videos, all the cram course, all the multiple choice questions. The only thing it doesn't include is a PDF of the book and downloadable versions of audios. So we have a plan that you can get, that you'd get some of those downloadable copies if you're on the train or something and you need the downloaded version. And then we offer on our gold subscription the instructor hotline. So you can access us one-on-one, and that's for an introductory price, it's $149 a month. So we tried to be very reasonable. We've talked to a lot of candidates on how to make the CPA exam something you can get through without feeling really overwhelmed. And that was one of the things that most candidates told us, is that it has to be priced right so that they can feel like they can afford it, and then they're not stressing about money in addition to taking the exam. So we tried to come up with something that we could offer students. So, yeah.
And I think our lease chapter is really, really good. I mean, first of all, I wrote it, and then Megan evaluated it. And Megan said, Phil, this is the best thing I've read since I read Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
I mean, you were very, you liked it. No, I think we did a good job on it.
Yeah, no, I think the lease, well, not Tom Sawyer, the lease chapter is quite good.
Tom Sawyer's not on the exam.
No, not on the exam. Okay. So were there other questions? I know we're running up on time. We have about 3 minutes for folks that joined us live. I'd love to answer any lingering questions if you're going in to sit for the exam before June 10th, which is my birthday.
That's right. Megan's
it,
birthday is coming up. I have it down on our calendar, Megan.
Yeah, I knew you did. Yeah, if you have anything else you'd like us to cover really quickly.
Is any of the questions that, let me see what I have here on my list. It says, first of all, I have a BS in accounting, and I'm not sure if I've met all the requirements to take the exam. What must I have? But first of all, every state is different, what they require. All right. So you have to figure out what state you want to take the exam in. You don't necessarily have to be a resident of that state. You want to find a state that is the easiest to meet your educational requirements and also the experience requirement. Now, most of the states' experience requirements say you have to work for a CPA firm or work under a CPA, okay? Not over a CPA, but under a CPA. And, in other words, you have to have a CPA you work under who can say, this person knows what they're doing.
That you're reporting to.
Yeah, and that's really made it a little difficult for a lot of people. All right, but what state would you send them to, Megan?
So the states that I recommend if you're not a resident of that state, Colorado is a great state. It's a non-resident state, and it doesn't require as much work experience. If you have a master's degree in accounting from a specific set of universities, then you can actually get your CPA license without working under another CPA. There's some kind of quirky rules if you're an international candidate, so I would check into those specifically. Another great state is Washington State, not Washington, D.C., Washington State. That they don't have a residency requirement or a social security number. Sometimes there'll be a state that doesn't require residency, but they do require a social security number. So just keep an eye out for that if you're international. It's one of those topics that keeps changing, so it's very hard for review course providers to keep up with all of the state board of accountancy's rules and what they're allowing, what they're not. So the best bet is to go to those board of accountancy websites and look at their current requirements if you have a state that you have in mind, and then go from there. You can apply and submit all of your documentation, and it kind of answers one of the questions on Facebook for a student who's located overseas, how do you start? And I would recommend those 2 states to start, and you can start looking at all of the requirements. And the big thing will be to determine if your academic requirements, your education for the 4 E's of what is required to pass, that education matches what the state requires. Each state has different rules for how many auditing classes, how many business classes, what level the classes are. So that's the part that's going to be a little tricky to match up international credits and what's required. So
I have a question here. It says, there's a lot of phase out numbers and exemptions in regulation. All right. Mm-hmm. Now, first of all, they don't test phase outs. Okay. Like, you can file this way as long as your tax AGI is less than this amount. They don't ask phase out amounts. Don't even study them because they change generally every year. Secondly, all right, they do not ask due dates on the exam. They no longer ask due dates of returns, okay? So skip that.
So for instance, if there was a phase out, how to calculate it if they gave you the number? So if there was...
Well, I can just say this. I'm not aware of any questions where they give you the phase out amounts. That's not important to them, okay?
That makes sense.
It's really, they want to make sure you know the tax laws, the tax rules.
Well, I know, like, for example, on Section 179 depreciation for the amounts, once it gets over a certain amount and it phases out, calculating that is kind of an example of where it might be
important. Except that when they give that on the questions on the exam, all right? That's the maximum Section 179s you're talking about.
Correct.
All right. For example, if the maximum is $500,000 for that year, all right, they'll do this to make it simple. They'll say they took Section 179 of 100,000. Mm-hmm. All right. So they'll tell you what they took.
Oh, okay.
Right? See what I'm saying? So they're never going to, try, because that changes also every year. Yeah. So what they'll do is they'll say, well, this taxpayer took the Section 179 for the current year. By the way, that's another thing. They'll say the Section 179 for 2018 is this amount, the maximum. All right. They'll tell you what it is. It may not be the right one per the Internal Revenue Code, but they'll tell you for that question. Also, now the big change, they will give now the actual dates on regulation, right, Megan?
That's right. So in the past, they always used like weird, like X20. So instead of saying 2011, they'd say 20X1. So it was kind of a nebulous date. Well, now with Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, there's lots of stipulations where, like for alimony and for divorce decrees, there's like a date bright line on when it's deductible and when it's not. And so they have to tell you what date the decree was, or you can't answer the question. So now they've updated the blueprints to say that that is something that's testable, and that's starting, it's currently testing. So if you go into the exam tomorrow, you may see some specific dates related to some of those that the rules have bright line date as when it starts to go into effect.
And I just want to talk about something about the order of the exam. We generally say financial first, auditing second. Why auditing second? Because you're auditing the financial statements, and you have to learn the generally accepted accounting principles in FAR. For example, they may say you're auditing inventory in auditing. Well, one of the things you learn in financial accounting is that you include in your inventory, all right, items that you have titled to, all right, even though you don't have possession, correct? So you get into FOB destination, FOB shipping point, all right? I think we discussed that in the inventory and financial accounting. That's also covered in business law, if I remember. But the point is this, all right? Financial auditing, Reg BC. But if you are someone who works in a tax department, or you really feel good in taxes, I would take regulation first, because regulation is not dependent on any other part of the exam. And what you want to do is you want to get a part, and pass it so that it'll give you the motivation to move on. All right. It's like the baseball hitter who's in the slump. Once that baseball player gets the hit, they will start hitting again. And this is the same thing. So you can take regulation first, but only take it if you really have a good understanding of taxes and you like that area. But otherwise, FAR first, auditing, Reg BC. All right. And anything else, Megan?
Well, I think that's probably it. I'm going to let Steve hop back on here really quick, because we realized the issue was that his Facebook Live and audio from us were playing at the same time, hence the delay. So apologies about that. We wouldn't have known until we were live that was an issue when we do the prep for this. But again, Steve is a great resource. So is Philip, and so is Phil. Obviously, as the only owner that I know of for CPA Review that's willing to take student calls. And because there's a team of us, we're here to help you with all of our strengths. I love IT. I'd love to help you with IT. And all of us have our strengths. Phil obviously is excellent at regulation, and I ask him all my regulation questions. So we can help you on this exam. Please reach out to us. We are here for you. We have really affordable CPA review options. Please share these free resources like this with your friends. We want to spread the message about the AICPA blueprint and make sure that people are as prepared as possible going into their career in addition to this exam. So I don't know, without further ado.
Can I leave with one cute little story very quickly?
Yes.
We used to do a live course because the exam was not computer-based. All right, we did live courses. And, people would come and sit in, and then we'd say at the break, you have any questions? And, I thought I had heard every question in the world. All right. So this guy was sitting in, and at the break, he came up to me and he says, I really like your course. And I like you, you seem like you really care. But I have a concern. I said, what's your concern? He says, what happens if you die? All right. So I really didn't have much of a response to that, except that, well, if I die, I guess I don't have to worry about it. But, this was like 30 years ago. What happens if you die? So I said, you'll get a refund. All right. I mean, God, I said to the guy, do you know something I don't know?
Right? I would hope not. Oh,
yeah,
no.
That's a scary, what happens if anyway, I thought that was just a question I had never heard before. And
well,
I just want to share with you that
rest assured the CPA exam will still exist if any of us are gone off the earth tomorrow.
I'm not planning on dying. And that's
None of us are planning on dying.
Not all, by the way, the leading CPA review course with that name on it, that person has passed away. So he's not going to answer your questions.
Nope, he won't. But we will, and we want to help you. So thank you for joining us for our monthly live Q&A. We are glad to have you as people that we can assist with this. And let us know if you have questions. And thank you for joining us.
What's the phone number if they want to call for questions, Megan?
So go ahead and send it. I think it's easier if you send an email to Sonny, SONNY, at YaegerCPAReview.com. He can route it to the appropriate person, and we can get you the information that you need if we didn't cover your question tonight.
And also, put your phone number down too, all right? And where you live, the central zone, wherever you
yeah.
okay?
When you're reaching out to us, let us know where your time zone is. We have time zone issues, but we have team members in all time zones, so that can help, so that we can help you out. So yes, please get in touch with us. We want to help you.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. And thank you, everyone who participated in this. And by the way, we would love your comments. What you would like, what you liked about it. All right. If you have any, constructive criticism, we would appreciate that also. All right. Oh, well, here's a note. Thank you very much. From Sean Rose, I think it said. Shane Rose?
Shane Rose. Yep. Thanks, Shane.
Shane thanked us. Hey, thank you. By the way, we're in this. Yes, we make a living. We get paid from this thing. But more so, I can honestly say that everyone here, all right, does it because they enjoy it. And a big, big plus is I look when someone just says, Phil, thank you very much for what you're doing. And I think every one of us like that. Hey, and we'd appreciate that. And we appreciate you telling us what you'd like in the next one we're going to do. All right. We're here to help you. But if you have a problem, Megan told you, we can get a hold of us and we will take it from there. So anyway, everyone have a real good evening wherever you are and have a good day tomorrow and be kind to everyone out there. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Once again, I'd like to thank you for being the best part of CPA Review and More with your host, Phil Yaeger. If you have any questions or topics you'd like to hear on the show, or if you'd like to be a guest on the show to share your story, we want to hear from you. Send me an email to the studio at podcast@YaegerCPAReview.com. If you're enjoying the content that we're providing, we'd greatly appreciate it if you'd submit a review to the Apple iTunes podcast app to let us know how we're doing. If you're in the market for a CPA review course or simply want to find out more about the CPA exam and what Yaeger has to offer, check out YaegerCPAReview.com or call our office and we'll answer any questions you may have. The link and the phone number will be in the description of this podcast. Here at Team Yaeger, we're excited to tell you about our new Yaeger CPA Review subscription format. It's the same great Yaeger CPA Review course that you know and love on an all-new month-to-month, no-commitment subscription format. Check it out today. Once again, my name's Rob Medford. I'm your executive producer and director here at the Yaeger Studios. And until next time, take care and be audit you can be.